Hey guys, welcome back to another video. Doing something a little different today. I have a guest with me today. This is Tony Adragna. I hope I pronounced that correct. I know you
Nailed
told
it.
me it was lasagna, but Adragna. So the reason I'm bringing Tony on is I kind of consider him a Twitter celebrity. But he posts a lot of things about coaching and basketball and really good follow on Twitter. So if you could follow him on Twitter, that's at Coach Adragna. And he posted something the other day that I thought was a really good point. It was the idea of being an assistant coach and trying to work your way up the ladder. And he brought up 7 points or 7 things and I think these things can apply to any coach in any sport. And I know Tony's going to hit on this a little bit, but I think they apply to, the work world, the workforce. And when you get into maybe another job, these things can help you as well if you're trying to work your way up the ladder. So we're going to kind of go through these things and we can kind of provide our own personal experience as coaches that go along with these things. And I'll let Tony kind of introduce himself and his background. But I'm excited because, our goals for this is to, again, just one, help encourage young coaches. I see a lot of young coaches kind of come into the game and they get a little frustrated. They want to work their way up and they don't quite know how to break through. And then the other thing is just hopefully to provide some information. You might be a new coach. You might be a young coach that really wants to become a head coach one day. So hopefully we can provide some information and provide our own experiences to help you out. So I'll let Tony run with this.
Yeah, thanks, John, for having me on. First of all, always love talking hoops and coaching and everything in between. And you mentioned my tweet about kind of moving up the ranks of an assistant coach in a program, and it's something that I did. I coached basketball for 7 years before I kind of shifted into where I'm currently at. But I started as a seventh grade coach in the program that I once played in. And then, by the time I left, I was the varsity assistant of the program. And so this was, this tweet wasn't just things that I just thought of through, in thin air. It was me living this experience and some of it being mistakes that I made through the coaching journey and then how I kind of reflected on that and then changed. But yeah, these were kind of my personal experiences of the way I worked my way up through a program and at one time in my life had aspirations to be a head coach out of a high school program. But yeah, and then you mentioned this kind of applies in the work world too. I always say that coaching basketball is just a microcosm of leading anybody in any sort of field. Now I lead a team in my day job, and so often I come back to things I learned through coaching basketball and leading a team and team building and building relationships and all those things that we'll touch on later. But more so than anything, just super excited to have this conversation. And like you said, if we can help one coach out with this, then then it's extremely valuable for us to chat about.
Absolutely. So again, Tony broke this down into 7 tweets. It's a really good thread. Like I said, follow him. He tweets a lot about like IU basketball and some things that he sees. And so again, if you're a fan of basketball, really good follow, really add some good perspective from kind of a coach's mind, I think. So yeah, let's kind of go through each of these points. And you kind of broke it down into 7 different categories, and I think they all kind of have their own values. So let's kind of go through these points and maybe kind of hit on why you thought this was a good aspect of being an assistant coach trying to work their way up the ladder.
Awesome. No, that sounds good. Yeah. And you mentioned to follow me on Twitter. Just mute me on Saturdays and Sundays because I'm also an IU football fan and a Colts fan. So just don't mind me because I will tweet my thoughts on them too, but they're usually pretty negative. So just mute me on Saturdays and Sundays in the football season.
All right, let's go through number 1. You talked about being patient. What does being patient as an assistant mean?
Yeah, there's a lot that to kind of unpack there. When you get into the coaching game, especially as a former player, you think you know everything. You're ready to set the world on fire. You played and maybe you had a coach you didn't like. You're like, I'm never going to do this or I'm going to do this, and then you get into it and you learn pretty quickly, hopefully, that you don't know as much as you think you do. But that patience aspect is coaching in the moment. If you're constantly just thinking about how do I move up, how do I move up, how do I move up, you're not really being present and being, people, the saying is like, be where your feet are. You're not being present, and that never works well in any aspect of life of kind of always thinking ahead and never being in that moment. And so that patience aspect is really just, you know, doing the duties necessary of whatever your head coach is asking you at the time. And not just immediately thinking like, hey, I'm ready to be a head coach. It's a learning experience 100%.
Absolutely. And I know you spoke about your journey. You started off at the junior high level, worked your way up, to eventually be a varsity assistant. And I can kind of share my personal experiences. I played at the college level. So when I came out, like you said, I was probably a little bit green to it. I probably thought, I should be a coach or a varsity assistant right away, and thought I knew a lot about basketball. And I found out very quickly playing the game is so much different than teaching the game to somebody who doesn't know how to play. You're taking a 13, 14, 15-year-old who doesn't know how to do the things that you know how to do, and you're trying to teach it to them in a simple way. It's a lot harder than it seems. I started off as a volunteer coach. My first year, I was not paid. I was a volunteer coach at the high school level, just kind of got in where I fit in. And, I was fortunate. I was in a really good program at Franklin Central. And John Rocky, who was the head coach there, did a great job of just giving me responsibility, gave me different things to do. And then I was fortunate enough the next year, the freshman coach left, and they said, hey, you want to be the freshman coach? I was like, absolutely. And I learned more, I feel like, as a freshman coach than I ever did as like an assistant. I really did. And people look down on being a freshman coach sometimes. And I tell them, you will get more valuable, actual, like real coaching experience, coaching your own team, or coaching, like you said, coaching a 7th or 8th grade team, because you have to make decisions. You have to make decisions on playing time. You have to make decisions on timeouts, game planning, practice planning. And it made me a better coach. I was 20, probably 23, 24. And so it made me a better coach. So, don't get caught up in the title of where you're at, especially early. Just try to get experience. Try to learn the game, try to get in where you fit in, do what you can to help. And there's something to be said about patience. It's hard to get a head job. It is. I'm sorry. Like, that's just the truth of the matter. Is it is very difficult to get a head job. And so build up your resume, build up your years, build up your experiences, and again, play the long game. There's something to be said about patience.
Absolutely. Yeah. And you noted I coached 7th, 8th, and freshman basketball throughout my coaching journey, and all are different. But you mentioned being a head coach and practice planning, like that is so valuable. Being a freshman coach too, you're adjusting on the fly a lot. You might have a kid one game and then he gets moved up to JV. Like you're never going to have like the best players in the program more times than not. If somebody's really good, or they might showcase they're really good, and that JV coach is going to pluck them, or whatever the case may be. So it's good too to kind of be able to adjust on the fly and kind of work with what you got.
Absolutely. Point number 2 that you brought up was the idea of being loyal, loyalty. So let's get to point number 2.
Yeah, I think there's nothing more important for an assistant coach than loyalty for a program in general. And I think it's why, head coaches have to be very selective in who they're able to bring on staff, because, loyalty, your head coach wants to know that you always have their back. There's always going to be noise outside of the confines of the locker room in the gym, whether that may be parents or fans or whatever the case may be. But you want to know that that's never infiltrating that solid foundation that you've built as a program. So if you have assistant coaches that are behind your back kind of talking, yeah, this coach doesn't know what he's doing, or XYZ, your program is going to feel the ramifications of that. And so I truly believe that there's nothing more important as an assistant coach to be fiercely loyal. Look, you may see something that your head coach does, you're like, jot it down. Like, I don't want to do that, when I'm a head coach or when I run a program. But if you start talking about that or talking about that to other people, it's going to hurt your program. And ultimately, it's going to hurt you. It probably is going to come back to you at some point that you were kind of trashing the person that, you were fortunate enough to get a job from. So to me, I think there's nothing more important as an assistant coach of a program than to just be fiercely loyal to your head coach.
That's a huge point. Like you said, you're not always going to agree with your head coach. You shouldn't. If you agree with everything they say, you're probably not being honest with yourself. And I tell my assistants, said, I don't want yes men. I want you to tell me when you disagree. And there's going to be times where I say, hey, that's a great idea. There's going to be times where I say, sorry, I don't agree with you. And we're going to move the way, that I think we should go. And they have to be able to respect that and not go, like you said, go tell a parent, well, hey, I think Johnny should be playing. And, Jimmy, he wants Jimmy to play. Like that just really creates a negative, toxic environment. And it's just not going to bode well for your program and whatever sport you coach. And the other thing you hit on this as well is the idea of like relationship building and networking. If I know as a head coach that you as my assistant are, you are unbelievably loyal, you're going to town for me, you're going to do everything in your power, and you tell me, hey, I want to be a head coach one day. Well, I'm going to vouch for you. I might call another school or contact another coach that I know and say, hey, I got this assistant. He wants to be a head coach one day. Man, this guy he's the real deal. Where if I don't necessarily feel like you're loyal, it's going to be harder for me to kind of go to bat for you. Or somebody, maybe you interview at another place and they call me. The coaching world is a small world. I tell guys, don't burn bridges because you never know who could help you. You never know who could hurt you because coaches talk, coaches know each other. And again, we've all had coaches that I think I've had coaches that are like my brothers. I mean, they are I'd go to their wedding. I'd go to their kid's bar mitzvah. I would I love these guys to death. And then you have those other coaches where you're like, it just didn't work out for whatever reason. And I think we'll hit on some more things when it comes to like ego and being concerned with your title and things like that. But at the end of the day, I tell my assistants, be the assistant you would want if you were a head coach. Right. So if you would want guys that are loyal and hardworking, that's what you should be. Just that if you can go with that mindset, you'll set yourself up for success.
100%. Yeah. It's, I'm a firm believer in karma. And if you do get that head coaching job someday and you weren't loyal as an assistant, it's going to come back to bite you. I firmly believe that.
Absolutely. All right, let's go to point number 3. I think sometimes this is like seen as a cliche, but it's so true. It's just the idea of like, working hard, work your tail off.
Yeah, yeah, and I think it's like, it's not like, wake up at 4 a.m. and go for a 2-hour nature walk, and then it's not that sort of cliche. It is completely true. Like you have to do more than just like what is expected of you if you want to keep moving up. Speaking back to personal experience, like I used to go open the gyms up for our guys when they wanted to work out. I ran all of our youth camp. I started our youth league and would be up at 8 a.m. after we just got home off a 2-hour road trip the night before and go set up the score sheets and all that stuff. And I did that because I wanted to help the program, but B, like, you're standing out. You're proving your worth to the person or the program that you want to move up in. And so to me, yeah, if you're just kind of doing the bare minimum, you're not going to set yourself apart. And sometimes that can be fine. Like not everybody has the time to do everything, and so some coaches have different aspirations. And on a staff, especially a high school staff, you've got some guys that are just volunteer coaches, and they're not even teachers or whatever the case may be. So I'm not trying to say like everybody's got the time to do everything, but if you do have the time and you do really want to work your way up and you've got aspirations to be a head coach, like you got to prove that you're willing to put that work in.
I think it goes back to trust, right? You're building that trust with your head coach, but you got to think there's other people in the building that make decisions besides the head coach. Your athletic director might see you, man. Oh, that guy's always in the gym. That guy's he's here before I am. And he's going to put a face with a name, and he's going to remember you when the spot opens up. And so you got to realize like all those little things add up. All those, we talk to our players about stacking days and getting better. Well, those things add up as a coach as well. You can get better as a coach. The more that you do, the better you're going to get as a coach. So put yourself in different experiences. Go coach. You know, we spoke before we got on here about, you know, you're coaching a sixth grade team, sixth grade AAU team. You know, that's gonna help you. It's gonna make you a better coach. You know, this summer I took our 7th and 8th grade team to Super Hoops, which is like a you know, a junior high camp. That's going to develop relationships. It's going to give you more experiences as a coach. And I think at the end of the day, it's going to make you a better coach. The more times that you can be put in different situations. And like you said, you're building that overall, you know, that trust and that buildup as a young coach.
Yeah. The more you can do, the more you're going to learn. And ultimately that's what this is all about. You know, as a coach, you're constantly learning, and then you're trying to take what you've learned and then teach it. So the more you can do, to me, the better you're going to become as a coach.
And I think the biggest misconception that I've seen with young coaches is this idea that being a head coach is just X's and O's. I would argue 75% of a head coach's job is not even X's and O's and practice and games. It's the administrative side. It's the planning youth camps, getting, you know, fundraisers for the team. It's going to be organizing the off-season schedule and working with other coaches. I mean, you don't know how many times you're working with coaches on scheduling and who's using the gym. And so I think a lot of times assistants only see like the glory of like being a head coach and, oh, this is what I'll do when I'm a head coach. And they don't realize all those little things behind the scenes that you have to do. And I think the more you can do that as an assistant and get those experiences of helping out, you know, like you said, with a youth camp, helping out with something outside of just the daily X's and O's of practice, it's going to set you up and give you those experiences. So then hopefully when you become a head coach, you're a little bit more prepared for those administrative things that you may not even know you had to do as a head coach.
Absolutely. Yeah. You know, if X's and O's is all you're about, you're in a perfect spot to be an assistant coach. Because yeah, you're not having to deal with a lot of the admin work. But if you're able to and can take it on, and your head coach is willing to give that up, certainly volunteer to help out with some of those admin tasks to try and ease some of that burden that the head coach has.
Absolutely. All right, let's move on to number 4, and that's that idea of focusing on relationships with players.
Yeah, to me, you know, relationships are everything, and you know, in life in general. And you know, focusing on those relationships with the players. And I know you'll touch on this in a bit, but you know, as an assistant coach, sometimes you get to pull that kid aside and play good cop, and you know, after the coach just reamed him or whatever, and not to undermine the head coach, but you know, just to say, hey, here's why he's saying this. Here's what you need to do to be better, and here's how, you know, you can reflect on this instance and learn from it. And you know, that's sometimes able to build a little bit of rapport with that kid. And you know, you can have those conversations in practices, games. And to me, it's so important. It like I said, it's an important aspect of anything in life. But you know, if you're focusing on those relationships with your players, and your head coach knows that you're somebody that players can trust and they go to, you know, that's a way that you'll be able to kind of work your way up, when your head coach can kind of see that from an outside looking in.
Absolutely. You know, I think being an assistant coach, you have such a different relationship to, you know, player, because oftentimes you're the young, you know, more relatable guy or girl who's coaching, and the players might be able to come talk to you about something that they don't want to go talk to the head coach about. And so you can be kind of that relay to the head coach, like, you know, hey, his girlfriend just broke up with him. Like, that's important information to have, because then that might adjust kind of how you approach practice, or, you know, you might lay off them a little bit or things like that. But being able to have those relationships with kids, one, shows that you're not just in it for the X's and O's and your personal glory. You're in it to, you know, to help kids. And at the end of the day, that's what youth sports, high school sports is all about. You know, if you're coaching college, your job's to win games. I get it. Your personal relationships might be way different. You know, I think the most successful coaches still have good relationships with their players, but I understand the difference there. But if you're high school, junior high, into, you know, youth sports, relationships are such a huge part of what you do. And I can tell you, like, your relationships with your players, like I said, can come back to help you, can come back to hurt you. I applied for a job, and one of the ADs called one of my former players. It's like he knew him because the kid played at Taylor, and there was a connection there. He said, "Hey, what did you think about this guy?" And if I didn't have a good relationship with that player, it could have affected my ability to get hired. So like that kind of goes back to that personal connection. You never know who could help you, who could hurt you. You know, what if that player is like, "Oh my God, don't hire that guy. I hated playing for him," and had like a negative memory of that experience. So you never quite know who can help you, who can hurt you. So yeah, develop those relationships. And at the end of the day, I believe if you have good connections, good relationships, good chemistry, it's going to carry over to the court, the field, your play, because those players will trust that you have their best interest in mind. They're going to go all out for you. They're going to play at a higher level for you when they know you care about them.
Absolutely. And you touched on it with like the relationships you had with some of your coaches on your staff, but like, it's the cliche saying like lives impacted is greater than, games won, but it's true. And like when you get those invites to former players' weddings and graduations and all that stuff, like that feels good as a coach. Like, you feel like you've actually made an impact, and that's what this is all about is impacting young lives, helping, mold young men or women into, productive members of society. And all this like about moving up the ladder is great and all, but really, those relationships, like it's really just being able to impact somebody's life, and all the rest of it takes care of itself.
Absolutely. And as you know, in youth sports, like the chances of you coaching a NBA player is less than half of 1%. The chances of you coaching a professional is probably pretty low. Most of the kids that you're going to coach are going to go on to be college students, go into the workforce. And like you said, you hope that you can make that connection and teach and prepare them, because I do believe sports really set you up to be successful in life. The things that you learn, being a part of a team, making sacrifices, working with someone, an authority figure, a boss, your coach is almost like your boss, expectations, being on time, all those things can help you in the long run as you get into the workforce. So you hope you make those connections and get those kids to understand that, you're preparing them for life. You really are. So, all right, let's get into number 5 here. I think this is such a big thing, and I can kind of speak to some personal experiences, especially this week, even as a head coach now, but things that I did as an assistant. But that's this idea of observe and learn. So hit on this, and then, I can kind of get into some personal stories.
Yeah. I mean, you're, as a coach, you're around the game all the time, even at your own level of practice or workouts or whatever. Always be taking notes, whether they're mental or, I'm somebody that likes to write them down or highlight or whatever the case may be. But, how do coaches run practices? How do they build relationships? Going out and seeing other programs, reading, talking to other coaches. Like there's so many resources out there. Listen to a podcast, whatever the case may be. There's so many resources out there that can help you become a better coach. And like the best thing that I think I ever started doing that has helped me become a better coach is reading. I read a ton of books on leadership and coaching and all that, and it helps me in my day job now. But just the idea that, like I said, you come in with your hair on fire when you're like fresh out of college or whatever the case may be, and you think you know everything, and then you learn that you don't. Hopefully, or you probably aren't going to last long in this profession, but
Yeah.
You learn and you grow, and it's the best thing. One of the best things that you can do is just be willing and open to new ideas. Even the game of basketball has changed tremendously, since you and I played. And so if we just continually ran the game the exact same way that, we played 20 years ago, then probably not going to win many games. But if you're not willing to pivot and adjust and grow, then, unfortunately, you're probably going to suffer from that.
Absolutely. I think this is the biggest separator of young coaches. is coaches that are willing to learn and just, again, have like a quiet confidence about themselves. We're going to get into the idea of ego here shortly, but this idea that like, I can still get better. I can learn as a coach. I don't know everything. I'm going to go try to absorb as much information as I can, find what works for me. I still am a firm believer in be true to yourself. Don't try to be Bob Knight. Don't try to be Mike Krzyzewski. Like you're never going to be those guys. Be yourself, but find what works for you. I always try to encourage young assistants, go to the coaches clinics. Okay. Your state probably has a coaching clinic for whatever sport you have. There's national clinics for whatever sport you coach. Go. You are going to meet other coaches. You're going to listen to speakers who are at the top of their field. And you're going to learn. Yeah. I take something. I mean, I've been coaching. This is my 11th year. I've been a head coach for, this is my 12th year. I've been a head coach for now. This is the start of my 8th year. I learn something every single year. Like I go and I find something new from this clinic or this coach that's talking or a new drill. We're on fall break right now. So I went to Purdue on Monday. I went to Ball State yesterday. I'm going to IU on Thursday. And I'm going there. I'm not going there because I want to see IU play, as much as that would be cool. I'm going there because I want to learn. These are some of the top college programs around my area. I want to learn from these coaches. I want to see, how do they structure practice? What are the drills they're running? I'll ask them questions. Hey, what do you do? Do you force your guy baseline? Do you want him to go middle? What's your routine? I'm trying to learn and absorb those things because I feel like it's going to make my practices better. It's going to make my program better because I'm going to take things back to our high school program and say, hey, Purdue runs this, or Purdue does this in practice every day. So don't tell me like it doesn't work or it's not something we should be doing. Like this is a Big Ten, very successful program that's doing it. And I think I really encourage like young assistants tag along. I brought one of my assistants up to Purdue so he could see, hey, like this is really good. He might want to be a head coach one day. So again, network, you never know, like I said, who can help you in the long run if you want to become a head coach. But at the end of the day, you're learning, you're getting better at coaching. You can get better as a coach. It's like being a player. I promise you, it's like being a player. I learn something every single year. At the end of the year, I try to audit myself and go, all right, what went wrong? What's something I would change? How was our practice structured? And I even hired last year, I hired my dad to be like I called him the director of basketball operations. Is hilarious, but he is such a good, former coach, knows practice structure. And I would just say, hey, I want you to watch our practice, watch our players, audit our program every day. Tell us what we did well, what we did wrong, what we can fix. And it was awesome. It was such a good resource to have because I would go, oh, like, I didn't even think about that. That's a good point. Or he would say, hey, like, man, that drill was terrible. and we could have those conversations about how to correct it, how to make it better. So always be auditing yourself, always be trying to fix things, trying to learn the game. And like I said, just never go into it thinking you know everything. That's just such a bad mentality to have. I think good coaches are always trying to learn and get better.
Absolutely. We ask our players to be open to growth and learn. So if we're not doing that, then, I think you're losing value just right there, then and there at the beginning, if we're not willing to be open and learn and grow. And it kind of goes into our next point, I think, on the next tweet of being open and willing to learn and grow.
Yeah, let's lead into that next. This is our 6th point, or your 6th point. Sorry, I'm not going to take credit for your tweets. But it's this idea of ego, and I think this is such a delicate balance. And I'll get into this idea, but talk about ego and how that can affect you as a coach.
Yeah, my tweet was put your ego aside, and it's time for full buy-in. And it goes back to that loyalty aspect, especially as an assistant. It's not time to boast about, hey, I was a D1 basketball player or whatever the case may be. You're buying into what your head coach is selling, and then you're disseminating that message to your players. I put that big egos are big shields for lots of empty space. And there's, like you said, there's a delicate balance because you can still have a personality. You can still be confident. You can still, like you said, not be a yes man, but you got to find the right spots. You're not showing your head coach up in front of his team and telling him he doesn't know what he's talking about, but you can go to him and have conversations about things you saw or observed. But just like you just said, you're a head coach. You could run your program any way you want to, but you hired somebody to, tell you basically what you've done right and wrong. And if you had a huge ego about yourself and you thought you knew everything, you would have made that hire. And in turn, you suffer and your program suffers. So there, like I said, there's a big balance there that I don't want you to not have a personality, because all head coaches have some confidence to them. But at the same time, you got to know when to kind of flex it and when not to, especially as an assistant. And ultimately it comes back to, like, you don't know everything, you never will, but until you can actually believe that internally, you'll suffer a little bit from that.
I think this is such a big part of being a young assistant in any sport. And I don't know, I heard this somewhere, I can't remember who said this, but they talked about the idea between having a strong ego and a big ego. Every head coach has a strong ego. Like, you don't become a head coach unless you have a certain level of confidence about yourself, a certain moxie, a certain ability to influence people and to be confident. But there's a delicate balance between that becoming a big ego and you thinking you know everything, and you being really stuck in your ways, or not being able to work with other people, or, like you said, always thinking you're right. And I think it's a delicate balance for young coaches, because, like you said, you come in, your hair's on fire. Hey, here's how I'm going to do it when I'm a head coach. Here's how I'm going to do things. And it's not always that simple. It's not always that simple. And this is a great quote from Urban Meyer. I mean, I know a lot of people have quotes about Urban Meyer, ideas about Urban Meyer, but this is a good quote. Okay. And he said, when you're an assistant, you give suggestions. When you're a head coach, you have to make decisions, and decisions have consequences, either good or bad. And the whole point of that is, when you're an assistant, it's easy to make a suggestion, right? I think this kid should be playing. I think we should run this play, because at the end of the day, it doesn't fall on you. When you're the head coach, that decision falls on you, good or bad. So that it's a little bit more, I don't know, a little bit more pressure. So, like I said, don't let your ego kind of cloud where you want to go as a head coach. That goes back to learning. Guys with big egos probably aren't learning or getting better as well as they could. Guys with strong egos know, hey, I'm a good coach, but I'm going to go learn from these other guys. I'm strong enough to realize, hey, Matt Painter's a better coach than me. Okay. I'm okay saying that. I'm going to go talk to him and try to learn the game. Michael Lewis at Ball State, this is his first year. I went and watched him practice. He's a college Division I coach. I'm going to try to talk to this guy. He's at UCLA coaching the Final Four. Okay. I'm strong enough in my ego to go, hey, this guy could probably offer some things to learn from. And then kind of my last point on this, and I see this a lot with young coaches, and I just encourage you not to get caught up in this, is the title. What's next to your name in the book? Okay. So many young coaches want to be the assistant coach or an associate coach, and they get so caught up. And I tell my assistants, I don't put whatever you want on your resume. If you want to put assistant coach and you are the freshman coach, I don't care. I'll vouch for you. If you are the JV coach and you want to put assistant coach, you don't have to put JV coach. Don't get caught up in the title that's next to your name, because that's not your value. That's not, there's plenty of guys that have assistant coach next to their name that aren't providing that much value to their program. There's guys that have freshman coach or JV assistant next to their name who are doing incredible things for their program and helping their head coach. So don't get so caught up in that. That again goes back to your ego. It goes back to what thinking or caring about what others think of you. Really just get caught up in getting better as a coach, learning the game, networking, paying your dues, as to say, and don't let your ego kind of shade or guide your process.
Absolutely. Yeah. As you noted, like, your value is not tied to your title by any means. And as we noted, there's no shortage of tasks as in a basketball program, especially a high school basketball program. So you can bring value in so many different ways. as long as you're willing to, and you speak up, and, that's kind of having that strong ego of like, hey, coach, I'd be happy to take this on, or whatever the case may be. But yeah, totally agree that your value is not tied to that, because, again, personal experience, when I was the freshman coach, I used to have a lot more free time before I had kids and whatnot. So I would go to every varsity practice right after school. The coach would let me be a huge part of that. I would run drills, and then I would run my freshman practice from 5 to 7 p.m. or whatever the case may be. And I'm so grateful that he afforded me that opportunity. Like I said, in the program, I was a freshman coach, but I was just as integral a part of the varsity program as well. It just wasn't my title as a varsity assistant or whatever the case may be. But I didn't let that bother me, because, my ego wasn't too big to take that on.
And like, I appreciate assistant coaches that will speak up. Like, you never know when a good idea might come from somebody else. Like, when we're sitting there at halftime and we're trying to make adjustments, I just go, hey, tell me what you guys think. What are you seeing? And I want to hear, and it's funny, we disagree on things, and sometimes they say stuff that's great, and that's awesome, let's try that. Sometimes I'm like, I don't know about that. And it's hopefully a good culture to, where they feel like they're able to speak their mind, and not take it personal. That's part of ego. Like, hey, sometimes your head coach is going to disagree with you. You're going to say an idea you think's the greatest thing. It's going to change, the scope of your season. And your head coach goes, no. And, it just doesn't want to do that. And you have to be able to say, like, hey, this is our head coach's vision. I'm going to support that. He disagreed with me. I'm not going to take it personal. I voiced my opinion. They, said no, or they disagreed. And next time something comes up, I'm going to be just as willing to give my input on that thing. And again, I encourage you to do that. And again, there's a way to do it, because I know some people watching this video are going to be like, oh, well, I tried it. My head coach, shot it down and, told me this. And so there's a way to do it. Okay. Like, obviously don't make it critical. Don't make it, to where you're attacking the head coach, like, oh, we shouldn't have done that. There's a way to provide that information or that input while still being like, hey, I want what's best for the team.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Don't go up to him like right after the game that you just lost. Like, coach, why'd you call that timeout there? Like, there's a time and place. And part of that relationship building is like, you got to know how to talk to the head coach, and when he wants, those suggestions, and when he doesn't. Just like building relationships with players, everybody's different and they accept feedback different ways. So part of it is just, once you have that relationship with your head coach, you'll learn, when to make suggestions, when not to, and that's part of it.
Absolutely. All right, let's get into our last point, number 7. And this is the idea of enjoy coaching. Hey, I'll let you hit on that, and then I'll kind of give my personal experience, personal stories, but this idea of just enjoy it.
Yeah, it's being afforded the opportunity to coach the game of basketball. To me, there's nothing greater. I've been out of the coaching game for 2 or 3 years, and I miss it. We were just talking off air, like there's some dog days, and there's some days where you're like, man, this is tough, this is long. But at the end of the day, man, it's such a beautiful game, and like I said, it's an absolute privilege to be able to mold young men or young women, and you don't take it lightly. But just enjoy that ride, and kind of loops its way back to the first point of being patient, live in the moment, coach in the moment, enjoy it. To me, like, there's nothing better than waking up on game day and just the anticipation, and making, did we game plan properly? Like, there's a little bit of anxiety, but it's a beautiful thing. It's so much fun, and I'm not saying every moment of it's fun. There are certainly aspects of it that you want to beat your head against a wall, and but that's all part of it. That's all part of the journey, and it's why I'm now coaching 6th grade AAU, because I miss it. Now it'll be a little bit of a different animal, and I'm gonna have to navigate that in ways that are a little bit different than high school hoops, but it's just so much fun. At the end of the day, when you look at it from a 40,000-foot view, to me there's nothing better than kind of enjoying that ride. In each year, It's going to be the only time you coach that exact group of kids. You know, you're going to have seniors leave, whatever the case may be. So embrace that group, enjoy it. It's going to be a ride with ups and downs, but at the end of the day, you have a privilege to be able to do it. And I just don't think you should take that lightly.
I think this is a huge point of just like, you're going to be doing it for, let's say basketball. Basketball is 5 months long. You better enjoy it. You're going to do something for 5 months. And we talk about, you know, it's the dog days of winter. You get up, it's dark. You leave practice, it's dark. You got to enjoy it. And I think part of it too is like, be somebody that others want to be around. Like, don't be that guy when you walk into a room where it's like, oh God, this guy again. You know, you should light up a room and bring positive, you know, positive energy to what you're doing, the coaching room or the practice, because again, you're going to be doing it. It's a long time, but as you said, it's a great responsibility. It's a great opportunity. You know, youth sports is, you truly have the opportunity to mold young men and women into better people, into better athletes. And that's not a responsibility that should be taken lightly. And it's something you do really get, I don't know. I just think it's a cool sense of when you see a kid from the time he was a freshman to a senior year, the development, and you had some impact on this kid's life. I think that's such a cool aspect of coaching, especially as an assistant. You know, you say, hey man, I remember seeing this kid when he was just a little freshman. I helped work with him, and now he's, you know, a senior on senior night. It's just such a cool thing, and not something that you can take lightly. So enjoy it. Again, I've been on teams where we were winning games, and I wasn't necessarily enjoying my time. And then there were seasons where, yeah, we were probably like hovering around 500, and I loved it. I loved coming into practice because the kids were so fun to be around. They wanted to get better, and it was enjoyable. The coaches I had with me were fun to be around, and it was a lot of fun. And we were coaching hard. We were, you know, coaching just as well, if not better, and just, you know, didn't see the same results. But again, those seasons can be just as fun and rewarding. So enjoy the ride. It's a long one. And like you said, you're going to look back on your coaching career and you want to be able to say, man, that was fun. Like when I was an assistant at Franklin Central for 4 years, that was fun. It was like, regardless of our results, we had some success, but it was a lot of fun. And I really enjoyed the coaches I worked with. And I wouldn't trade that for, you know, for the world. I was 24, 25. Man, I love those years. So enjoy it. I highly encourage you, view it in those ways. All right, so let's recap these, and then we'll kind of sign off here. But again, if you're an assistant coach wanting to work up the ladder, again, this is all from Coach Adragna. Man, some good tweets. Like I said, I encourage you to follow him. You see his Twitter handle right there on the video. Again, I want to thank Tony for joining me. Again, he offers some really good perspective and some personal stories about working your way up the ladder as an assistant coach. I encourage you guys to go follow him on Twitter. Just to wrap those things up. Again, if you're trying to become a head coach or you're trying to work your way up the ladder, here's 7 things. Number 1, patience. Number 2, be fiercely loyal. Number 3, work your tail off, work hard. Number 4, focus on relationships with players. Number 5, observe and learn. Okay, you can constantly get better as a coach. Number 6, put your ego aside. And number 7, enjoy it. Again, if we miss something you guys feel like you should add, leave a comment. We'll try to answer it best you can if you have questions or if you have anything to add. But again, I hope our goal with this conversation was to hopefully, if you're a young coach or somebody that's trying to work your way up, that you kind of get some perspective on what it takes, or what's something that you could improve on. And again, hopefully offer some encouragement. Again, keep working hard, keep trying to get better, learn, network, and think long-term. Stay patient. You know, if things are meant to be, it'll happen. Just, all you can do is control the things that you can control, and that's your aspects of coaching, getting better. So again, if you like this video, please like, subscribe. Again, I hope we can do more of these videos where we can talk about topics such as basketball. And thanks for tuning in.